We've had some guests recently, and the caliber just keeps getting better. Today, we are going to the NFC West because it's San Francisco 49ers time. We've got John Chapman from the 49ers Rush podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. He's got a great following there. Matt Doss, as you know him, has been hassling me to get John on, and here he is. John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Man, it is absolutely incredible to be with you, and the time difference is always difficult. But, Kurt, I'm so happy to be here to talk football, talk 49ers, and, man, just appreciate all you do, man, for the community.
No, we appreciate it too. I mean, you told us a great story off air where you've got, a bunch of Aussie listeners, and you told a couple of them that, hey, we're going on an Aussie show, and turns out that they'd already subscribed to the Outback QB, which is great because it means we're getting to the West Coast, we're getting to the US, but also it means that the pool to recruit more listeners is smaller than we thought. So maybe we don't have that much growth left in us, but who knows? Look, it's been is tumultuous too strong a word for the offseason of the 49ers? You think that's appropriate? They've hit the franchise reset button, it would appear. Talk us through what's going on.
I think you could use a stronger word, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's been rough because you go from the high of being in the Super Bowl, overtime Super Bowl, which never happens, losing it, and then you have the worst season that you could remember, going 6-11 when you're, again, the NFC West favorite. And then you just watch so many beloved players walk out the door without the 49ers even putting up a symbol of resistance in any way, shape, or form to retain talent. And so you lose 8 starters in one offseason and replace them with 0. The 49ers signed 0 starting caliber players in the offseason. And it does seem like you're just going to build through the draft. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you are one of the very rare teams in today's NFL that are doing this quote-unquote reset. You've seen the Rams do it. You've seen the Bills do it. You've seen the Eagles do it to a smaller scale. All of those franchises seem to have rebounded nicely. But you're doing this balancing act, the 49ers, with some key foundational players, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. Like, they still have the star-studded names, but you've lost even more depth on a team that did not have depth to start with. So it's been hard losing all these players. Now, the good news is you did replace quality coaches. So you bring in Robert Saleh, you bring in Brant Boyer, and so you're hoping coaches, I use this phrase a lot, is it Jimmys and Joes or X's and O's? 49ers seem to be betting a lot on the coaching improvements, not so much roster player improvements for this 2025 season.
Well, let's go through a few of the names that have been released or traded or just signed elsewhere. Obviously, Deebo Samuel traded to the Commanders. Jordan Mason, who was so good in that backup running role, has gone to the Vikings. The releases, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, signed elsewhere to Talanoa Hufanga, Drake Greenlaw, Aaron Banks, signed for too much money at the Packers, we did point out, but still he's gone. Javarius Ward, and then one of the cult favorites on this show, Josh Dobbs, although he was a bit part player. But there's a lot of players there, and I guess the question is, why? Why now? Is it because they saw last year that when there were a few injuries, the second level of talent it wasn't there. It couldn't sustain a season, and we were all shocked with a 6-11 season despite those injuries. So is that why? Do they just need to rebuild from the ground up because they were exposed?
There's 2 schools of thoughts whenever it comes to this. My sentiment is the owner, Jed York, who has been one of the top spenders in the NFL for the past decade. He spent a lot of money, a lot of cash. I think the 6-11 was like, why am I spending the most cash and we're not even in the playoffs this year? I think if you look at the fact that they replaced nobody, they literally replaced nobody. It has to do with the owner saying we're not going to be a cash top spending team this year until we get things under control. So it does seem to be a little bit of a 1-year audit or reset, not a true rebuild, because again, you still have a lot of the premium players, Trent Williams, I mentioned Deommodore Lenoir, there's a lot there, but it does seem we're going to reel back some of this cash spending, be a little bit more fiscally conservative from an ownership, not a salary cap standpoint. And that's the interesting thing. The 49ers still have over $40 million cap space this year that they're just not going to use. They're just not using it. So it's not a cap situation. It is a NFL owner situation. And then the second view that, I alluded to at the start is, well, we're just going to reset, go younger, go cheaper, try to rebuild for the future. It's one of those two things. I'm leaning the NFL owner, Jed York, just said, hey, I'm not going to spend all this money for a 6-11 result. Y'all got to prove me something.
Yeah, so he's punishing them. It's punishment for last year. What about how much does the Brock Purdy contract looming situation play into it? What do you think he gets? What's the right amount?
I think it's going to be around like $58 million per year, which is high. I'm on the higher end of that.
58.
But whenever you, wow. The APY, $58 million per year, I think is probably where it's going to be. The guarantees and the cash spendings and the built-in restructures, that the devil's in the details.
Yep.
And so you could talk about $58 million, but if it's built in a way like Jalen Hurts' deal that is very team friendly, or is it built in a way like Kyler Murray's deal, which is not team friendly? That's what's going to be the key. I know on ESPN and everywhere else, they're going to focus on just the APY because that's easier. You don't have to know much.
Yep.
But whenever you dive in, does it have the built-in restructures? Because even though the 49ers have $40+ million cap now, you look at Jalen Hurts 3 years after his extension, still a $20 million cap hit. So how you structure the deal, I hope it's longer term than shorter term, but you got to pay your quarterbacks. And I know somebody watching or listening to this and saying, well, man, Josh Allen just did 55. That's almost fully guaranteed. The 49ers contracts are almost always players who bet on themselves. Brock Purdy's not going to get the guaranteed money anywhere close to what Josh Allen did. And Josh Allen's been on the fringe of greatness and just can't get past the Chiefs. He signed a deal fully guaranteed that helped the team roster construction.
Yep.
I don't think Brock Purdy, that's going to be on the table because that guaranteed money is just not going to be anywhere close to what Josh Allen or Deshaun Watson got. But the number APY probably is going to be close to that.
Okay, and there's another name that it's constantly in the news. If Brandon Aiyuk's not got a headline for 1 week, you know he'll have one the next week. There are whispers growing that all of a sudden, for various reasons, they might be forced to trade Aiyuk. He might go elsewhere. Is that actually happening, or are they keeping him, or is he now not content because he realizes there's not a championship-winning team there right now?
The fact of Brandon Aiyuk being moved has nothing to do with really Brandon Aiyuk's wants or needs at all.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with, one, he rubbed a lot of people in the 49ers organization the wrong way with how he handled things. And even after the deal was signed, he still went to the podium in a press conference and bragged and laughed about how hard he made it on the 49ers and how he made it more difficult than it had to be and thought it was funny. But then the injury. That was huge. So April 1st, there's not one, but two major option bonuses that kick in north of $20 million. So if we go back to the owner, hey, let's get some cash spending back. It's another $20 million out of the owner's pocket that is due April 1st this year. So that's less than a week away. Mm-hmm. That is why there's a little bit of smoke to the fire. But the problem is Brandon Aiyuk's injury is huge. I think if the 49ers could get a second-round pick in return, I think they would be open to moving him. I don't think that there's that value out there because of the injury. I just don't see it. You could have got that last year, and they probably should have taken it. I was very adamant. You should have traded him.
Yep.
But now that you signed him, he's a young player. Yes, he's going to be injured this year, but the foundation for the team moving forward should be Brock Purdy, should be Brandon Aiyuk, should be your rookie last year, Ricky Pearsall. Build around those three. Yeah, there's still a lot of legends, but George Kittle last year of his deal. Christian McCaffrey, maybe 1 to 2 years left. Trent Williams, maybe 1 to 2 years left. Dominic Pooney, you want to include him in that young, stable offensive players. I think that's how they should build. So if somebody comes to the table and says, hey, we'll give you a second, I would entertain that. But the second round pick's not going to be on par with what Brandon Aiyuk can do over the next 3 years.
I love that you mentioned Dom Pooney because he has become a cult hero on our show because about 3 months out from last season, we were trying to pick some rookies that people didn't know much about that could have a good season. Who do you think? And we went for a couple of wide receivers or linebackers from the 3rd or 4th round. And then Hawley, who traditionally is just he's into the skill positions, the exciting side of the game. He randomly picked Dom Pooney, a third-round guard for San Francisco, and said, this guy's going to have a great year. And we were flabbergasted that he even went there at the time, not because we didn't like Pooney, but because he'd never talked about a guard in the history of the podcast. And the one he picks turns out to be a star, right? So we love watching Pooney now just because it builds the narrative around Chris being Nostradamus.
Big guys need love too, Kurt. Come on now.
Right.
Let's be honest. And man, what an impact he had. And the 49ers offensive line, probably one of its worst years since Kyle Shanahan showed up. Yeah, you had the center, Jake Brindle's play regressed big time. You talked about how Aaron Banks got overpaid. He wasn't healthy at all at any point last year. And he left the lineup 3 times, and 3 separate players replaced him, all played above him, but he got his job back every time. And then right tackle Colton McKivitz, he plays about where he is paid, but it was rough. And Brock Purdy was running for his life. The only stable factor wasn't even Trent Williams, who did go down some, but he was injured. It was Dominic Pooney. He was the one stable force on that offensive line, and again, should be a key building component for the 49ers moving forward. He's going to be a fan favorite for a long time, and hopefully, be one of those 10-year 49ers players that's just a stable at right guard.
You mentioned Ricky Pearsall as well, and we've talked about him a lot. One of the stranger rookie seasons because of the shooting pre-season, and then he somehow recovers, and within 5 weeks he's out there playing, and you'd expect any rookie to ease into it, but he needed a little bit longer to just get his health back, and before you know it, he actually started to produce, and he had some big games towards the end of the year. But this is a guy who's been really hard to place, in my opinion, over his NFL journey. Even when he got drafted, it was higher than we thought. A lot of guys were lower on him. Some said third round, then he goes in the first, and then the incident, and then the up and down season. And I would say, from my perspective, it looked positive. And I would go away as a 49ers fan thinking, we might have something with this guy. Is that the sentiment among 49ers, or did you want to see more?
I think, like you said, it's been a roller coaster. When he was drafted, nobody saw that coming. Yep. You had major needs on the defensive line, major needs on the offensive line, and wide receiver was not one of them. You had Aiyuk, you had Jennings, you had Debo, you had George Kittle. It was like, goodness, what is happening? But Kyle Shanahan played wide receiver. We've drafted more wide receivers than any other position since Kyle Shanahan showed up. And there's still a wide receiver need even the next year. But Ricky Pearsall came in and he never practiced. This was before the shooting. This is a player. Ricky Pearsall never missed one game in 5 seasons at 2 separate schools in college. Iron Man. Well, then you draft him, has not one but 2 hamstring issues, has not one but 2 shoulder issues. I think he had like 4 practices all through training camp. Like, I'm at the training camp practices, and every day was, where the hell is number 14? Now he's number 1. Where's Ricky Pearsall? Like, he's not out there practicing. And then you get into the season, and he gets shot right before the season starts. So,
well, that's because you doubted that he was Iron Man. So he said, look, I'll get shot in the chest and literally come back and play in a month there. Am I Iron Man enough for you now, John?
That's right, man. 50 Cent, what is happening here? But you have to talk about the resilience, just how tough. If he would have played any games last year, it still would have been amazing. This kid could have died. And to come back and play and to be kind of the number 2 to Juwan Jennings last year, the hope is off the charts. And now he's finally healthy. And man, no hamstring issues, no shoulder issues. The bullet wound seems to be like he's played through that. So now he gets a healthy offseason. He gets to learn the playbook. Debo is now removed. So there is no hindering with what is going to happen. Run, Ricky, run, baby. Yeah, he has earned the term Iron Man 100%, Kurt.
Yeah. You mentioned you're at training camps. You got inside access to these guys. You get to see them up close. What is, and this is a question without notice, but what is one thing that would surprise a fan about an NFL training camp? When you went to your first one, tell us when that was, but what did you think it would be like? And then what was it like when you were there?
It was about 3 years ago, and I have a coaching background. I coached Texas football, like high school football, but by far one of the largest programs. So, like, we've been around, NFL style players and caliber players, and I've coached several that have gone on to win Super Bowls or whatever. I don't want to throw their names out there, but it's interesting because you have this, idea of what it means to be a professional football player and all that stuff. But whenever you go out to a training camp practice and, the first time it's, you got helmets on, shorts, shirt. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's real low key. It's chill. And you realize, man, a lot of these guys are 100% professionals with how they handle things. And it's really, really quick to spot the rookies and the adjustment it takes at, going from high school to college to NFL. It takes a minute to figure things out. And Fred Warner, who I consider the standard of what it means to be a 49er and to be a pro, he showed that whenever he showed up as a third-round pick, took over the defense. If you are not at that level, one of my favorite things about the 49ers, like you've got George Kittle, you've got Juwan Jennings, you've got Fred Warner. They are enforcers. And you see them not corral, but literally correct. It's almost like, I don't know. Basically, like if you don't get in line, we're going to force you to be in line. Yeah, it's a bully mentality out there. And you just see how infectious that is. When Fred Warner's barking at you, you listen. And you see these rookies wide-eyed and all that stuff try to step into line, and the personalities come across, and it's a lot of fun. So very, very lucky to be a small part of that and just to observe that from, the sidelines. But the culture there, it's strong. And this year's going to be a testament because you haven't spent big. There's not any big names coming in. We'll have to see how it is with these rookies coming in. 11 draft picks for the 49ers, tied for NFL most in the 2025 draft.
Well, look, and you say culture, that's generally the reason, it's one of the big reasons why teams have sustained success, and that's why we were all so shocked last year. I know the 49ers have missed playoffs in recent-ish history, but to see it happen the way it did, we all just expect them to bounce back, right? So even now with this roster, we all, on our side of the fence anyway, think they'll find something. We had an episode on Monday where we talked about worst to first, which team is most likely to go worst to first in their division, and whilst it's always hard because it's unlikely, we all thought, well, if we have to put money on one or if we have to back one in, it's the 49ers because you just have an inherent trust. So we'll see how that plays out. A couple more things before I let you go. And we'll definitely get you on around training camp time because we would love to hear more about what's going on there. That would be fantastic. But the draft is coming up and they have a pretty good draft haul this year. You've got, 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. You've got pick 11, 43, 75. Where do they go early? What's that pick 11? Do they stay there? And if so, what do they do with it?
I think every team wants to trade down. This draft is not built. There's not like 10 elite players. I think there's 5 elite players, and there's not much of a difference between pick 7 and probably like pick 30, to be honest with you. So the issue is, can you find somebody to trade down? I think everybody's going to be trying to fall down to collect picks because the strength of this draft is the second and third round. That is where the money will be made. Now, the problem with the 49ers, which we have alluded to, there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of holes. You need offensive line help, defensive line help, linebacker, corner, wide receiver. You could go anywhere. Yeah. So trying to pick this 49ers 11th overall draft pick, it's difficult. I think most fans would prefer defensive line. You have probably the worst defensive tackle room in the NFL right now for the 49ers. This is a very strong defensive tackle group. Probably the consensus is a Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss defensive tackle. Me personally, I would rather go with the Oregon guy, Derek Harmon defensive tackle. I think he's the perfect fit. But that's a little early for him. I have Derek Harmon rated the 19th player. So picking him at 11, little bit of a reach, but it's a major need. He's a cleaner player. We'll see. If I had to bet right now, Derek Harmon is where I would put my money. But I could give you 15 players and explain why each one of them makes sense. Yep. That's why the trade down makes sense. But and another thing to the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, they have the most unique board of any NFL team. Mm-hmm. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they do their own thing. They don't give a damn what consensus thinks. They do not care. So expect wild cards to take place on draft day for sure.
We're pumped for this draft. It's the first one since we've been covering the show where not only do we not know who's going first, but we don't know what position's going first. And as a result of that, what's going second, third, fourth, and fifth. And you talk about there's 5 elite players in the draft. There's an argument to say that the guy who could get picked first is not an elite player. Is Cam Ward elite? A lot of people don't put him there, but because of need, we see it all the time with quarterbacks, he'll probably go 1. So, look, we can't wait for that. the question I ask all of our team-specific guests is, give us a prediction for this year. If you had to, hand on heart, say, what's the win-loss record for the Niners in 2025, what do you think? And I know it's early.
It is early. But again, you talked about how they finished last. They have a fourth-place schedule. It is a very forgiving schedule. We'll have to see how the dates work out and travel and all those things and rest advantage. You know, the NFL is crazy with all those things. But they have a very, very favorable schedule. If you could get on the right side of the injury bug, which I don't know when the last time the 49ers have been able to say that, hit on a couple draft picks, there is no like the over-under should probably be 9.5 wins for the 49ers. But then you look at the schedule and it's like, man, it's not what you've seen the past 6 years for the 49ers. You are playing a very favorable schedule. I think 10.5 wins would be the over-under. Wow. I think it's going to be high. And I know I'm biased and all that, but whenever you look at the amount of all-pros, the NFC West is a down conference. Last year, the NFC West, all 4 teams had one combined all-pro. That's it.
Really?
Only one. It was
Who
Fred
was
Warner.
Oh,
Fred Warner.
Okay.
But now you're adding, if Christian McCaffrey can stay healthy, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Diamador Lenore, Nick Bosa, nobody else in the NFC West has that build. I think 10 wins is a very realistic option. And most of the betting sites, they're kind of on par with that as well. As the 49ers are the second or third favorite team in the NFC to make it to the Super Bowl already.
To make it to the Super Bowl?
Yeah. Somebody's got to come out of the NFC West.
There is confidence. I mean, this is what I alluded to before. You sort of always still believe in the 49ers, regardless of the names on the paper. And like you said, if those big names get healthy, then they could be anything. But look, John Chapman, fantastic chat. Really loved it. Tell the people where they can find you. What platforms are you on?
Yeah, wherever you watch and or listen, just type in 49ers Rush. Check us out. Yeah, we're Niners-centric. But on Twitter, I'm really, really big on draft stuff, draft videos, draft breakdowns, all that stuff. JL_Chapman. But, man, Kurt, cannot say enough and just really appreciate what you do at bringing so much to the community where you're at. And, we have a lot of Aussies. And whenever I said your podcast, they were like, all right. So awesome. Hat tip to you, my friend.
Thanks so much, John. John Chapman, 49ers Rush. We'll chat soon. And everybody else will be in your ears in a few days' time.